3D printing is an amazing technology and it's getting better every day, but it's still no substitute for fully manufactured injection molded parts or CNC machine parts. So you still have to do that. I've been an industrial designer over 35 years and I'd worked at a number of the sort of leading design consultancies in Australia prior to Catapult. We've seen clients go direct to factories or through sourcing agents that are less interested in design and more interested in getting a commercial agreement in place. And it doesn't always work out well. It can cause a lot of headaches down the track.
Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the DevReady podcast today, I have Nathan Pollock. Nathan, thanks for taking the time out of your day to jump on an episode and have a chat.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. It's great to be here.
For those of you that are new here, I don't know how I do this. I've never actually met Nathan before, so I don't know much about him. I'll let you take it away and let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I'm the founder and CEO of Catapult Design. We're a product design and development consultancy based in Melbourne, Sydney, and Byron Bay in Australia. We help clients design and develop new products in many different verticals. We've been mainly focused over our journey on connected products. So we do a lot of physical hardware and the digital user interface design across connected products. But we've done medtech, sports tech, agri-tech, ruggedized products, consumer goods, simple products like watches, hardware, equipment, all sorts of different things for clients, and take them from the journey from discovery right through all of the development and design and testing, prototyping through to production. So that's it in a nutshell.
It's a similar approach to what we do with our DevReady, where we get clients development ready, but more in the software space. What were you doing before, or what led up to Catapult? I always like to start with that story.
Yeah, sure. So I've been an industrial designer for over 35 years, and I'd worked at a number of the sort of leading design consultancies in Australia prior to Catapult. I actually left a pretty senior role to have a sabbatical for about 12 months with my family, went around Australia, and at the end of that, settled in Byron Bay as opposed to where I left from in Melbourne, and needed to or wanted to start a consultancy and needed a job. So I started Catapult 17 years ago, and it's sort of grown from there.
That's an interesting story. I haven't heard many people that do that. I think I've had one other person on the podcast that's sort of taken a break and then started something new, but not someone that actually shifted locations as well.
Yeah, it was quite amazing, and obviously a life-changing journey for me and the family. So fantastic.
Oh, it definitely would have been. I'm sure it probably gave you a fresh perspective on things being out there as well, and having a bit more sun than our cold Melbourne winter days.
I think a bit of time to think about things and what's important as well, and it's all worked out well in the end. So that's good.
It's good to hear. So on the design side, where you mentioned product, just for those that are listening, it's more like hardware, physical products.
Typically, I mean, we're industrial designers, so we come from a background of physical products and all of the aspects of designing and developing those types of products, from discovery and research right through concept and into detailed design and production. But over the last, I'd say 8 to 10 years, with the rise of digital connected products, we've really lent into the digital side of product design as well. So I guess understanding that in an ecosystem of a product or trying to solve a problem, you're dealing with both the physical hardware and the digital user interface and all the touch points that the customer might have with a product.
It's more than double the problem for a client potentially if they get it wrong up front. Because it's not just the software that has to get rewritten. You've potentially got the hardware that has to get reprototyped, recreated. And I know it's a big process to go through and design a circuit board or whatever's needed for the hardware to be built to spec.
You're absolutely right, Anthony. The ability to change physical electronics or physical product hardware is not as readily available or as simple as updating software. There's costs, there's time, there's physical manufacturing changes which create issues. So you've got to try and get it right along the way through the process. More so, I mean, software is very iterative, as I'm sure everyone's aware in your listener base. But the hardware side of things, you've really got to prototype early and understand where you're headed, and then develop things in a way that allows you to get to the final result without too many changes once you start hitting tooling.
That's probably changed a lot in the recent years, I would imagine, as well, with the aim like 3D printing to get really quick prototypes, where before you probably had to have a minimum production run of several hundred or thousand units before you could actually see the thing.
Yeah, it has changed a lot of things. It's changed the speed to market. It's changed our ability to understand what a prototype or a product's going to look like. We can prototype it and 3D print it very quickly and early these days. It's also changed the emphasis a little bit. So back in the day, you would rely on a tool maker or a molder to solve some of those problems, whereas now the designers have got to solve those problems. So we have to take a lot more responsibility for the success of a product, which is fine, but it just changes the emphasis and the process a little bit from back in the day.
Does that mean sort of changing molds or tooling that needed to create the item, or?
Yeah, in the past, that's how you had to do it. But now what we try and do is resolve most of those things in prototyping with 3D prints and other forms of prototyping. We use a lot of different forms of prototyping before we go to hard tooling. So you're trying to resolve all the challenges, and then when you're doing the tooling, you hope that you're 95% there before you start the tooling.
Because it can be quite expensive. I think one of the very first few episodes, we had someone that was building some custom GPS trackers in like AFL teams, so they can then track during training the performance and output of a player. And like a failed run of the hardware was like about $350,000, just because they didn't go through the process and they were dealing with China directly. And going back about 6 years, there were 3D printers, but they weren't as prevalent, so it wasn't as easy.
Yeah, and look, I mean, 3D printing is an amazing technology and it's getting better every day, but it's still no substitute for fully manufactured injection molded parts or CNC machine parts. So you still have to do that to take it to production in any sort of volume. But you can get a long way with 3D prints and prototypes these days.
How else have you seen sort of the industry change in probably clients thinking that, all right, you can 3D print something and now that's the shortcut to manufacturing?
Yeah, I mean, there's several things. Most of them are around technology. So 3D printing is a big one. The other thing is, as 3D CAD has evolved and the visualization tools associated with 3D CAD, so what we call rendering, you can visualize a concept for a product very quickly and make it look amazing and look very real. And clients think that the job's done. And typically that's an early stage concept, and then we have to go back and do a lot of detailed design to get it manufactured correctly. So there's a challenge there. It's exciting, and it is wonderful to take a client's breath away when you present a concept, but you've got to be very conscious of explaining the process to them. So that's probably the change over recent years. And then in the last 2 years, as everyone knows, AI is hitting the scene, and that's really affecting our process and the way we work as well. So fast tracking early research, fast tracking visualization, we can animate a product concept in a matter of seconds, minutes, as opposed to what might have been a week's worth of work 5 years ago. So there's a change in expectation. We have clients come in with AI generated concepts right from the get-go now, and you've got to smile and say, yes, that's great. We know what you want, but it's not right yet. So yeah, there's quite a bit of that's changed in recent times.
I think probably being in your industry, there's a bit more of a barrier to actually trying to get something to production, simply because there is something physical that has to be created, unless they've got connections in the right manufacturing space and they can push those designs and then they'll find out that it doesn't work. I think in our space where it's just straight software, it's a little bit easier to try and get something published and available to someone to use. So you got Lovable. They host it for you as you build the product.
Yes.
But that lets people, it's a bit of a false sense of, not achievement, but a false sense of production readiness, I would say, which is you can get something out and available to users, but they haven't considered any of the other 15 other things that they need to know about and how to maintain and keep something in production, which would be very similar to the physical world.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, the benefit we have is that the step to production is always very expensive and challenging. So, the design costs are one thing when you're developing a new product. The cost of production, so the cost of tooling to manufacture the parts, the actual physical cost of buying the parts from a supplier, the cost of shipping and logistics, it's prohibitive. So you only do it when you're confident and you know what you want to do. And so there's a level of commitment required by clients to take that leap. And so it's not done lightly. You have to be pretty serious about it most of the time, especially if you're doing something, say if you're doing a medical product, you're doing 10,000 or 100,000 parts, it's a lot of money.
It's a big level of commitment, like you mentioned, but it's that also sort of separates, I guess, the people that think, oh, I can just do this on the side and in my own time use AI as opposed to trying to do it properly and turn this into a business. They've thought about it and they go, all right, is it actually worth the investment?
Yes, and that's one of the challenges we have, particularly when we're working with entrepreneurs and startups who haven't been down this path before, is that we have to, and I think I've seen you do it in your podcasts and you talk about it in your business, but you've really got to bring them along the journey and educate them, which we do, and it's fine, and we enjoy doing it. But you need people that are willing to listen and understand that there is a process. It's quite tricky, and it's not just a matter of putting something up on Kickstarter and hoping the best. The money just doesn't roll in. So it's quite tricky.
That's probably everyone in your space is like the golden goose is like, all right, I don't have to fund it. I'll put it up on Kickstarter and get people interested. But then again, there's a whole business in getting Kickstarter ready and marketing and promoting through Kickstarter to get everything ready.
There's a whole ecosystem around that, as I'm sure you're aware. And you can do it well and you can do it poorly, and there's a big difference. So we've seen clients really smash it. We've been involved years ago. We were involved with the Flowhive launch on Indiegogo back in the day, and it raised 16 million US in a very short space of time. It was crazy. So being involved with something at that level was incredible for us as a journey to go on. But then we've also had clients that only raise a few $1,000s because they haven't really developed their campaign well. And so there's everything in between. A lot of clients do well because there's a process now, as you would know. There's a very definite process you should follow.
Yeah, and the best example I use is the house construction. You go to an architect, they give you an initial plan, and that's where you get wowed and you get a render of your house. Then it has to go to the engineering, and they got to tell you exactly what beams, what specification, how's it all going to be put together. Then you finally go to a builder who puts it together, and then there's minor changes.
When you want to sell it, you go to a real estate agent and they put the polish on it and put it out to the world. And that's part of what Kickstarter is, right? You do need that PR and that marketing to make all of the back end work that you've already done sing and tell the story. And so I think it's a good analogy, actually.
Yeah, especially for Kickstarter. There's a whole world of marketing there that people don't know about, that to help get something in the magic algorithm, it pops up or it's the trending or whatever it may be. But then even with hardware, it's going to be very similar. Like someone can get AI to mock something up these days, and there's MCP servers and skills now that can do CAD. But you can't just send that directly to a 3D printer. And there is services where you could do that, but I'm sure then it's going to be a slow print. It's going to use too much. It's the wrong infill or whatever it may be. And it's not going to be exactly what you want if you want to get any sort of scale out of it on a sort of bespoke demand, at least.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing that happens is that we've seen clients go direct to factories or through sourcing agents that are less interested in design and more interested in getting a commercial agreement in place. And it doesn't always work out well. It can cause a lot of headaches down the track. So one of the things we try and get our clients to do is think about how design adds value, what the return, the ROI on design is, and why you're engaging in a company like ours or a company like yours to do that process and actually add the thinking and the due diligence behind a product before you launch it. So it's really helpful in terms of the outcomes.
From my perspective, when we do it with our clients, I enjoy the ideation and the design, like the planning design phase. Do you have a similar part where you like the one preferred over the other, over the whole concept?
Yeah, I really like the early stages too. In our world, the sort of back end where you're pushing through the design for manufacture and the factory discussions and then the production, that's where it becomes a little bit arduous at times. But the early stages, I mentioned it before, but I still love that moment when you walk into a client presentation and the team will unveil our concepts, and it literally takes their breath away because they weren't expecting what we present. They're expecting something. They've got something in their head, and they've told us a design brief, and then the team in their concept work will come up with other ideas, and they'll put them in front of them and just go, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Like, this is not what I expected. I absolutely love it. And that you've got them at that point. And that's why you become a designer. That's the best part about it.
We don't get that sort of wow moment with what we present. It's a lot of requirements and gathering wireframes you work on as you go. So there's no one big presentation about that. But a lot of what we do, is a lot of incremental systems and more B2B side. So it's not as much of that. Here's the one thing we've gone and tweaked it, and now here's the big showcase. But I can imagine what that feeling is like for you.
Yeah. I mean, look, our equivalent to that is that we'll work through the process, and then we'll make a prototype. And usually we do, different iterations of prototypes. So from, non-working appearance models through to test rigs, which are pretty crude, but testing how a mechanism works or something. And then the ultimate is a pre-production, fully functioning prototype, which looks and feels like the real thing, but it's a one-off or two-off or something like that. And when you present those to clients and they really hit home, or sometimes they don't, sometimes there's some challenges, that's a key moment in the project as well, because they can hold it in their hands, or they can interact with it. And it becomes very, very real when they see that.
Yeah, and then it's I can imagine it once they have it in their hands and actually start using it and holding it and feeling it. You're going to get a lot of excitement from them, and then they may even start getting more ideas, because in our case as well, once you start using the software, you start figuring out what else could I do with it, how else could I assist, how can I improve it. I'm sure they're going to be doing the same thing.
Absolutely, and they find problems, or we find problems that we didn't expect. So, as much as you try during the process, you always find out things when you prototype that you didn't think about, or it weren't obvious. And you hand a prototype to someone who's never used a product before, and they do something completely different, and you just look at it and go, why did you use it like that? But that's not their fault.
Yeah, and that's the same with software. But yeah, it's probably a much quicker learning as soon as you can grab something. As soon as someone grabs something, you just tell if they've grabbed it the right or the wrong way that you intended. That's probably one of the big key indicators immediately, I can imagine.
Absolutely.
So on the AI side a little bit more, you've talked about sort of how prospective clients are bringing AI to you. How is you and your team leveraging AI to assist in designs? Because that's where everything's going now. It's getting a bit more of assistance, or a bit more maybe brainstorming.
Yeah. So we've definitely lent into it. We are using it across a number of areas of the company. So the obvious one, which most people will be doing, is we're using it for really targeted research and discovery activities. So, and it's not just typing in a question; it's actually feeding in information, a process, challenging the answers, getting the outcomes that we need. We've used it to help build out presentations, and that might be in terms of the language and the layout and so on, copywriting in some cases, although everyone knows when AI has written copy. So it's more about copy editing probably in our case. The main area we're using it at the moment is in visualization. So that the tools that I mentioned earlier that were 3D CAD driven, now they can be driven with sketches, they can be driven with descriptions, they can be driven with 3D CAD that's not as polished as it had to be previously. So in days gone by, you would have had to put in every single detail to get a shadow line or a branding detail on a part or whatever it might, texture. Whereas now you can do a rough CAD model, you can do some sketches, you can describe some stuff, and you get outcomes that are pretty amazing. And the other thing that's happening, which is a big jump, is that you might have a front view of a product or a concept, and then you can say, I want that part to be picked up off the bench, and I want a person to engage with it. and smile while they're doing it, and you can get that done in a matter of minutes. So we can do things like that. We can visualize a product in situ. So we did some work recently where we were designing a robotics system, and we wanted to put that robotic system in a working, functioning factory with people and other things around them, and using AI to develop the backgrounds of those images was so much faster and more realistic than if we had to do it in the old way with Photoshop and trying to put in, find an image that was about the same angle and saw the same things, and dropping in a rendered model that was rendered with the same lighting and all of those, in the same perspectives and so on. So that really speeds it up. We haven't really jumped into pushing 3D CAD with it yet. We're sort of starting to explore that. Definitely looking at things like managing technical drawings and checking drawings, and doing things like assessing production quotes for whether they're appropriate based on the data that we get back, checking logistics requirements and shipping requirements, all those sorts of things you use it for a lot as well. So it is embedded in the business, but there's still, from a design process point of view, there's still very much people in the middle, designers making decisions, developing concepts, challenging ideas, understanding what the sort of human interactions need to be. So haven't seen that be pushed aside yet. Hopefully it won't be, but you never know.
And from what you said, there's everything I'm seeing with businesses that we speak to as well. It's the ones that are using it well are not using it to replace work. They're using it to either augment what they're currently doing. So it's either I've generated something and I get a second review, research and look up topics, and you go back and forth until you get the idea back. And it's also quickly get a draft. So what you're doing with like the images and generating the content. And that could be how you move forward with the sort of the 3D modeling aspect is give us a quick model, you get something set up, and then the team can actually then take it rather than doing all the basic boilerplate potentially. That's a lot of, like, with heavy lifting can get done with the boilerplate work, so you don't have to do that repetitiveness.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds for the workforce in the future. We haven't seen it cause us to not employ people at the moment, or to not give people tasks. What we're doing is we're stretching further with the same team at the moment. So,
And we're in the same boat. We're being able to deliver more value with the same amount of people. We haven't cut down anything yet. And I think that's probably how you should look at it, really, is how can you deliver more value with the same rather than trying to cut back on people? Because I think in the longer term, people don't realize is that if you cut a person, you'll end up spending more probably in token cost or of what the employee may be over a year. It's not cheap to run the AI models if you want to use the best ones consistently.
I think that's true as well. I also think there's a lot of learned knowledge that people have that is creative and original, and maybe it's repeating knowledge that's been used before. It's not quite getting to where, I don't know, it feels like there's some circular aspects to AI at the moment, and the way that ideas are generated or information is generated that might be not as innovative as you'd like in a product development sense.
Probably in the physical hardware space, you might be a bit safer simply because when someone does hold something, you get feedback and you make a change, but it's not documented that person X held it this way and that's why we're making the change. So the AI doesn't know about that. And it can't physically go and test something either until the robots come in and then he tries to replicate what humans do. So I think you might be a little bit safer there. And then also, yeah, where you mentioned it's using existing things where you're trying to create something new, it's going to be, I think, have a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I hope so, because I like to say that the design team needs to have a place in these discussions and a strong leadership. I think we need to keep things human. The idea of interaction and user experience is very human, and if you systematize it too much, you're going to lose something, I think.
it is a human world. We still have to live in it. So you do need things that work with people and work in groups of people. A robot, like I saw a video the other day. It was someone brought it back. It was from probably a year ago. It was two AIs were talking to each other, but instead of using words, they were using beeps. They could communicate through
A different language.
sound faster. Yeah, it's a different language, but they could communicate faster to each other that way because humans weren't involved.
It's amazing.
That's a AI world, effectively, not a human-centered world where it does need to make a difference. So, what do you see coming into your organization with the way things are moving in either the digital world or in the hardware, and anything exciting you see that may shake some feathers up in the industry or anything like that?
Look, I think the connectivity of products is the key thing, and I did mention it before, but it's really ubiquitous now. There's virtually no products that aren't connected in some way, and I think the way that will just continue to be something that everyone expects of the products that they buy, and they expect them to plug into their network seamlessly and operate seamlessly. There's a higher expectation. The other thing that we're seeing that's sort of surfacing now, that's been discussed for a long time but hasn't been really pushed by clients, is we're seeing a requirement to be more sustainable and thinking in a more circular manner with our design work. For the first time ever, we've got clients coming to us who are saying they want an absolutely circular product. So by that, I mean a product that is designed in such a way that at the end of its life, it can be completely disassembled and recycled into all of its constituent parts. And a client has put that as a major part of their design brief. And we've had clients interested in sustainability before, but never have we had someone come out and say, this is the thing about my brand and about my product range. So that's exciting.
Yeah, they're taking a position on that and using that as their differentiator.
It's sort of counterintuitive in a way, but I think the smart products will help us and technology will help us do better. And so I'm really bullish about leaning into that as well, but at the same time trying to look at ways that we can make products more sustainable and make our systems circular as much as we can.
I think on the sustainability part, as someone who's not in your industry and like designing hardware and paying too much attention to how things are progressing, the biggest place I'm seeing the change is probably in packaging.
Yes.
And hardware. I'm getting a lot of boxes where it's unbelievably made. It's like folded together in such a way that it's one giant piece of cardboard, and that blows my mind. Yeah, there's no staples, nothing. It's just like a giant origami kit, the way it's been put together to hold the package. And then there's a lot more different materials that are being used rather than glass, metal, leather, plastic in things.
Yeah, that's right. And there is a lot of consideration goes into that. Packaging, you're right. Packaging is the number one area where people can notice it. But I mean, you got to think about product housings and assemblies as well, because what we have to face in going into places like Europe, for example, is that products must be disassemblable. You must be able to take the battery out for recycling. You must be able to pull the product apart so that it's got individual components to recycle them, because if you've got one material in one part and a different material in another part, you can't just roll them together and recycle them together. They have to be recycled separately through different paths.
I think the EU actually recently put out a mandate that there's going to be, it's law to sell a phone in Europe soon, next year maybe, where the battery has to be replaceable.
Yes.
So it'll affect every modern smartphone moving forward from that time.
Yeah, and there's a thing called right to repair, which people would have heard of, where that's starting to gain momentum as well. So the ability to be able to repair something, which for the last 20 years hasn't been the case. You have a single-use product, basically.
Probably batteries is one of the bigger things that are changing from what I've been keeping up with in tech. Silicon carbide batteries, where these things are shifting to rather than the current things, so you can get more capacity out of things.
Yeah, I think it's capacity and safety are the two key things. Obviously, lithium-ion batteries have been an amazing development, but they are dangerous. And, we've seen that with some of our projects we've worked on, where you've got to be really conscious. We did a heap of work with Flightboard, and it's an e-foil, so an electric-powered hydrofoil surfboard. And it had a battery system that had to be completely protected from water and overheating, overcharging. So it's got a very complex battery management system. It's got a range of safety features. If you get salt water in those battery cells, you've got yourself a bomb nearly. So you've got to be really, really careful. New battery technologies will resolve some of those issues, bring costs down, increase capacity, like you say, and that's happening all the time. So it's exciting. We have to try and keep up with it as much as we can. But that's technology. That's what it's.
So 5G connectivity, yeah. So things can communicate at a faster rate of pace. You get more real-time communication from devices. Is that affecting how you sort of design things?
I think the major thing is that people are wanting more richer data. So, they might want video, or they might want quite complex data. We're working on a product at the moment that's using video capture in an agricultural application, and the amount of data that they have to shift to track this stuff that they're tracking is quite incredible. And you couldn't have done it a few years ago, but now it's actually quite viable. So these changes are really interesting. I think one of the areas that's really blossoming is wellness and associated, personal fitness, being able to monitor, even with smartwatches, the amount of information you get from a smartwatch tells you about your heart rate, your HRV, your blood pressure, your pulse, oxygen levels, all sorts of skin temperature. It's just incredible, and we've never had that before. So quite amazing.
The more things change, the more possibilities there are as well. And then there's little remixes on every old idea as well to then add that to it, as long as it adds value to the end product.
I think so, and that's something we feel pretty strongly about, is we don't want to be involved in just designing junk for the sake of it. So we're trying to get involved with products that have a purpose or a real need, which is great when you're doing a medical product or a safety product of some sort. Obviously, we do things that are for fun, like flight boards or watches, but you try and make them as eco-friendly as you can.
Yeah, and that's the direction everything's going. It's a bit more, as long as there's either an entertainment value or a health benefit. I think that's where everything's sort of moving to in most things, because that's really what you need. It's not just adding an IoT device inside of some device for the sake of it.
Yeah,
You're not going to build a smart chair to tell you to get off the chair.
yeah, it just annoys people, that sort of technology, doesn't it? So I think it all has to have a purpose. It was interesting, actually. I don't know if you've seen the recent release of the electric Ferrari. Have you seen that at all? Called the Luce?
No, I missed that one. I think.
They've only partially released the interior and not the exterior at the moment. That's coming in a few weeks' time. But it's been designed by Johnny Ive and Mark Newson, so two very famous designers, and they've really lent into more analog controls. So it's got digital features, digital controls, but a lot of the user interface and the touch points for the driver are really analog because of Ferrari's history, obviously, and the automotive industry. And they're seeing that come back into favour, and we are too. I mean, people like touch points. They like physical feedback. And so that's translating into industrial design all over the place at the moment, which is great.
I think in cars, it definitely makes sense to have buttons. The worst thing they could have done is remove physical buttons and switches and toggles and put it into a screen where you're trying to concentrate on the road, and now you have to go 6 menu layers deep to change the aircon.
Yeah, it's just crazy where it's got to. And, you sit in a car, everyone's had it. You sit in a car, you rent one, and it's beeping at you and it's making all these crazy noises. You don't know what's going on. All you want to do is just drive the car. So I think it's a great example of where we've taken it too far with the electronics and the sort of interference of that stuff. And it's just interesting to see at a very high level someone like Johnny Ive and Mark Newson and Ferrari are actually acknowledging that.
Yeah, they're seeing it, they're bringing it back and making it, they're designing with purpose again. It's not designing because you can.
Yes.
Which is probably the worst way to go about it.
Yeah.
Nathan, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today. I'm sure we probably could have gone on. And there's probably another episode there. Just because you mentioned beeping, there's probably a whole thing on sound design in your products that you can probably cover as well. But for those of you who want to reach out and find out more, how can they do that?
best thing to do is look at our website, catapultdesign.com.au, catapult with a K. You can find me on LinkedIn, Nathan Pollock, and our business on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, just reach out. We'd love to help.
We'll add all that to the show notes as well. And once again, thanks for joining me on an episode of the Dev Ready podcast.
Thanks, Anthony. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.